Hey, everybody, welcome to week four. This is the week that we're going over your midterm, and it'll be the outline of your research paper. We'll get to that in a little bit. So let's first go over what week four entails. So this week, we're talking about the Mendocino complex wildfires, and we will be discussing the wildfires and pet and animal evacuation planning. So many families, if you grew up with a pet, you'll know that a lot of families consider their pets as part of their family. And a lot of people won't evacuate or won't leave due to not being able to move their pets or their animals. And these animals aren't just cats and dogs. They're different reptiles. They could be snakes. They could be cows. They could be horses. So you really think of the full spectrum of size and difficulty when it comes to evacuating with these larger animals. So let's first go over the weekly overview. So upon completion of this week's assignments, you'll learn about the importance of having an effective and inclusive evacuation plan, inclusive being the main word there, and also the midterm and final research paper. For this week, you'll complete an evacuation plan for pets and animals, as well as an extensive outline for the final research paper. Again, extensive outline, being that this is going to be your midterm assignment. And upon completion of this week, you'll have an understanding of how pet and animal owners regard their animals, an understanding of how different sized animals need to be considered in evacuation planning, and an idea and outline of what your final research paper will be. So you'll have some videos on pet and animal emergency preparedness. You'll do some reading around the ASPCA disaster preparedness for pets, ready.gov's animal preparedness, how zoos protect and evacuate animals during wildfires, and then you'll have a few assignments on this as well. So let's start with the first assignment, 4.1. This is animal evacuation planning. So many people consider their pets as part of their family and refuse to evacuate without their pets in tow. For natural disasters like the Mendocino complex wildfires, residents had to evacuate with their pets, and many were not prepared. So what you're going to do is conduct a review of the wildfire evacuation plan and process for the residents of Mendocino County based on their current evacuation offerings that were in place for the wildfires. Include the responsibilities of the local and state government, as well as what the residents are expected to do and would be held accountable for. For example, the federal government says you should be prepared for 3 days worth, having 3 days worth of supplies in case of a shelter in place. Very similar situation in this scenario. What are residents responsible for? So be sure to also include, similar to an after action report, what went well, what could have been improved, and how it could have been improved. How did the county address animal evacuation, and how could they have done better? So you'll see here you have some links for the pet evacuation shelter guidance, as well as the Mendocino County Emergency Preparedness Emergency Operation Plan. Your discussion for the week covers disaster evacuations for pets and animals. So there are many types of animals that outside of pets that need protection and, more dauntingly, evacuation during natural disasters like wildfires. The Los Angeles Zoo had to deal with this during the recent wildfires that came within a half a mile of the zoo's borders. So there are two ways to respond. There's either shelter in place or evacuation. What would each response look like for the Los Angeles Zoo? Think about positives, negatives, and the cost of each method, and discuss what you think would be a better option based on those criteria and the Mendocino complex wildfires. So you'll want to explain positives, the negatives, and when you're talking about cost, it's not necessarily just the financial cost, but also the cost on the animals, the cost on the people doing the work, how it compares to what they might be doing if they live in an affected area as well. You really want to take an all-encompassing approach on this. And lastly, we're looking at the research paper. So this is your midterm assignment will be the outline for your final paper. So in the first half of this course, you've seen case studies for different natural disasters, how they impacted communities, and how they were responded to on a local, state, and federal level. On the second half of this course, we'll look a little bit more like international response as well. So for the final, you'll have to pick a natural disaster we haven't reviewed and conduct your own critical review of the response. This will involve you deciding on a disaster that has an after-action report, which will make it a lot easier for you, and you'll have to include, in one form or another, the following: a background on the disaster, including location, impact on the community economically and socially, the response from the local, state, and federal government, also the response from the community and outside organizations. Think of like nonprofits like Catholic Charities, the American Red Cross. You'll also have to look at the communication from government to residents and how responses were conducted based on the established emergency operation plan and what can be done better for the next disaster. This is last part, number 5, is where your critical thinking should come into play, right? What have you learned about communication, perceived risk, risk interpretation? You're going to bring that all together in this section. For the midterm, you're going to create, and I stress, a detailed outline of what your final paper on said natural disaster will be. As you look at these links, you'll see resources as how to write a research paper. You'll start from here. You'll also submit this as a Word document. Your submission must include class name, my name, the date, your name, and the natural disaster you chose. Be sure to include spelling and grammar checks. You can use Grammarly.com, which is a great tool that you can copy and paste everything in that will help you fix any grammar or spelling mistakes you might have. And then down here is a link on how to create an outline for a research paper. This is very important because the more work you put into this, the easier it'll be for your final. So I really, really encourage you to put the amount of effort needed into this to really get a good outline for the research paper in this. If you have any questions on the disaster, on the outline, if anything is unclear, reach out to me sooner rather than later, because this is something that is going to, like I said, really help you out for your final paper. All right. Have a good week, everyone.